Thank you for the warm introduction. This is it, the last hurrah, and so for me this is a real joy. It's there's some pain involved, right? There's pain management involved in that joy, but overall there's some fun in this challenge, and that is normally we, like many of you, have prepared these brilliant presentations and slides and graphs and data sets and thoughts and takeaways, and put those together very eloquently and have rehearsed in your mind and heart and spirit where you're going to go with the narrative, and done a tremendous job in pulling off fabulous 20 minutes. For me, I do none of that. I just took a plane to get here, or a few planes, and arrived and went into sponge mode for 24 hours or 30 hours or so, and fired off a couple tweets in between, a store fire or two, and then scrambled late last night and this morning to put a summary together. So it's different, and in that regard, it's fun from the usual formula. But we will move quickly. I wanted to apply a theme in the final presentation, and that is, of course, we're at the height of March Madness. So if you guys don't mind a little basketball in between, the high-level thoughts and takeaways, I thought that might make it a little more fun in terms of the flow. We've already got a good portion of my background in front of you, so in that, just know that you've got a certified news geek in front of you. I know I've got a lot of fellow geeks in the room, so it's good to get together and share our geekdom. But we've heard the term futurist, and a lot of people are dabbling. I think we all these days have a bit of a futurist in us. It's in all of our benefits to find that warm and fuzzy futurist inside. So I've been doing a lot of work in this regard for the last couple of years for CNN, but also on behalf of all of us that work in news and journalism. I think what I'm doing now is transcending more and just thinking about it along the lines of the art and science behind good anticipation, right? Like that warm fuzzy guy is really like Wayne Gretzky telling me skate to where the hockey puck is headed, and that's what we're all trying to do in terms of engagement, tools, platforms, audience, and all of the fast-moving, evolving media landscape. So, 2 days, so much firepower, so much brain power, all these really smart molecules that have come into the room that are on our streams. They're following via the webcast, and they're firing off questions and engaging that way. And while we love the format, the 20-minute rapid fire style approach is good because it keeps things moving. It never gets dry, boring, or stale. It also challenges us to bring in quite a bit. And right when we start to wrap our heads around certain subjects or terms or concepts, boom, it's on to the next speaker. It's on to the next subject. And that can be quite taxing and feel a bit overwhelming. If you're like me, it might take you a couple days once you get home and process and digest and look back at some notes and some tweets. But all that being said, I've got some of my March Madness friends, and we will reinforce some of the things we've heard and provide some takeaways on what we do as we stuff our suitcases and our toolkits and prepare for the trek home, whether that is a few miles or a few thousand miles. So again, similar to what I was able to provide last year, the idea is for me to take some of the key takeaways and do a little summarizing, make sense, apply some context around what it means, big picture-wise. We will galvanize. We're going to rally around what we've learned in some of these concepts and the cool examples of who's getting it right and who's experimenting in some really bold, ambitious ways. And of course, again, what we do with that. It's all fine and dandy that we've parachuted into the mecca here of smart journalistic thoughts, but many of us are going to leave here in a few hours or soon. And what do we do with it then, and how do we share that with others, with our teams, with our colleagues, with the rest of the industry. And I know I have some producers in the room, so if you sense the pattern with the IZEs, I just wanted to put a little disclaimer there. Nobody will be harmed throughout this presentation. So what have we learned? How do we boil that down into less than 20 minutes? Well, it's going to be really difficult to boil everything down, but just know that we, as attendees of the Dissecting Engagement program, we love to tweet about this. These are the top trending terms. This is from TweetRoot, by the way, if you guys are interested in word clouds and you want something quick and fast for your iOS device. So it's a free app. So day one, day two, these are a lot of the things we've been talking about, and obviously based on the sizing that would capture most of the hashtag attention. So we love to talk, we love to share, we love to interact and engage, not just in this room, but obviously those following from afar. So one of the things that became quite apparent early on was engagement, just the word, the term, the concept, and what it means, right? So it means different things. It obviously has implications and application toward all of these areas, audience and platform and story, and how we transcend devices and screens, and where we take our content, our media, our narratives. We've heard a lot about engagement across marketing opportunities and brand and business models and revenue, and the intersection of monetization and where we're taking so much of these efforts. And we've also heard quite a bit about just engagement across ourselves, internally, at our organizations or the industry, how we extend ideas, how we attack and reimagine workflow, how we think about new ways and new approaches to storytelling, right? And so these are some of the high-level areas. There's probably others, but engagement, when asked about what we're doing with it and what our strategy is and where we're going, it's going to depend on the context in which we're talking about that, and if it's all the above or we're calling out specific items here. So we've got, I've tried to summarize in a few words because there's a lot of tweets information, there's a lot of chatter out there, and you guys have all taken notes, but obviously starting with the very beginning, when Amy got the party started, as she often does in some very profound and smart ways, and talking about going beyond devices when we think about audience engagement and looking to apply audience as the priority in evolving conversation and chat, and thinking about some new ways and new approaches. I loved everything, and I'm sure you guys did. So many of the takeaways we heard over the last 2 days have had some profound effects on my thinking and allowed me to open up some new channels of thought. I loved what Tim talked about specifically at the Texas Trib about this casino approach, right? That consumers enter the property with the mindset or inclined that they are already ready to gamble. They're already ready to interact, but it's our job as providers, as hosts, as the content companies and the engagers, to keep them in there as long as possible, to keep that experience, to extend it, to move it forward, to not let them check out and move on to the next place. What we heard from Megan around the value of not just digital but also physical, and the integration of everything from graphic novels and the call-in numbers. These things were fantastic. So we heard quite a bit on this front. We learned from Rami that, and we've heard this before as well, so it's good to reinforce a lot of these ideas and concepts, but it's good to have gurus, people that are luminaries at our organization. There's nothing wrong with that. But what's better than having one or two of these people? It's having a small army of really good / great thinkers that can be much more effective long term. Right, so we want to think about that in terms of the innovation processes, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail. I absolutely loved what Asif had to say on location. I thought, and I'm sure you all feel the same way, but we were wowed by the examples of the potentials with location-based content and reach and engagement, touching people, and providing some new service or something they weren't yet thinking about. And it's not just the potentials of tomorrow. We saw things, marketing materials, applications that are in use today that are going to have some major implications on the way media is shaped going forward. So very exciting stuff that we got to see. Of course, Kim's personal story of finding that entrepreneurial spirit while she was smack dab in the middle of a chaotic newsroom, and understanding that there was a gaping hole in terms of an opportunity to fill it with social media utility and tools and training and support that wasn't being offered several years ago, and to build a small team to rally around these opportunities, and why journalists oftentimes encompass the spirit and the dynamics that make people of entrepreneurial spirit really successful. The takeaways go on and on, folks. David's presentation this morning on visual search blew me away. So much untapped potential there, and it feels like we're only scratching the surface based on a lot of his expertise on new ways forward around this particular type of data mining and understanding users and analytics and those behaviors. There was several common themes that we heard throughout, and there were some important ones, right? So when it comes to this user data and metrics, right, that useful information could be your best friend or worst nightmare. It depends on how you're positioned, right? So oftentimes we're exposed to data, but we get the what, we don't know the why. We'll talk about analytics here in a few minutes as well. And we heard quite a bit about innovation and allowing our people an opportunity to iterate and to prototype. We've talked about failing. We've talked about learning and building smarter, faster, new applications, products, approaches. And these things are exciting if things play out in terms of opportunities to support our people with the right, adequate opportunities to learn and be exposed. And what we've heard time and time again for the last couple of days is go to where the audiences are. And let's not be mistaken, when we talk about growing new audiences, it's about younger eyeballs, right? It's things we've talked about the last couple days. It's things that haven't directly come up in terms of product names, things like Yik Yak, or we've talked a little bit about Snapchat. I'm sure all of you saw the news yesterday. NBC News is the first broadcast outlet to offer a Kik page. There's all sorts of avenues that are all aimed at one thing: younger eyeballs. Everyone's in this business now. And again, the other common theme was it takes a village. And that's whether your organization, are branching out the responsibilities, the roles, the dynamics that go along with smart engagement beyond just a specialist or a couple of people, and it transcends the news group, or better yet, the entire enterprise. Or that means that organizations are partnering with their audiences and getting help and support from the public to do better coverage and create a richer ecosystem, or partner with other media entities to operate at a different level, scale, output. Jason talked a little bit this morning about authenticity, which I thought was really important. He broke it down in a slightly different direction, where he aimed it at intimacy and chemistry, which was very cool. I want to talk about the obvious tension that takes place, oftentimes more at mature legacy media companies, when we're talking about growing new audiences and going to these really cool happening places that's where the teenagers hang out. We need to be there with our coverage and our people and our very mature anchors, and we're going to show how cool we are. At the same time, working diligently not to alienate our existing core audiences that helped us get to where we are today. There's this rub, both internally, about how we handle social media, about how we handle mobile, whether mobile truly is first. We love to use that term across industry. It's a wonderful concept, but we have to be honest on what that really means, and different strokes for different folks. And so what does that mean in terms of workflow, priority, and overall objectives? So authenticity, finding that sweet spot, again, particularly a bit more challenging at legacy media that are worried about reputation and brand, and our focus groups and research has said this for many years, and we don't want to lose that. That's our DNA. Yet we need to do a little cliff jumping. So where is that balance? R&D, we've heard that a couple of times. The need to innovate, to iterate, prototype. Let's come up with new ways of telling stories, of producing content, of touching audience. And that is absolutely important. For many years, we have been jealous of who? Google, right? The place that allows their employees to go off and experiment in playgrounds and ride scooters and shoot Nerf guns at each other and come up with really amazing solutions that change people's lives. And we were busy with our nose to the grindstone, cranking out the 5 o'clock news or the lead story or whatever the next thing looked like. And that's that we've operated under those conditions in newsrooms for a long time. However, there are some interesting examples where that sort of investment is taking place across smart organizations. And you guys are, I'm sure, aware, NPR's introduction earlier this year of their storytelling lab is something we should all be jealous of, frankly. And so that's a very cool example for us to look to and how that's going to work, and the structure and the success stories behind it. If you're not keenly familiar with the program just yet, they've announced this a couple of months ago. They're going to have a couple of producers that will build the structure for a storytelling lab inside NPR so that employees can pitch ideas to a panel. As panels get selected, the employees are allowed 2 weeks away from their regular 9 to 5 to go out and experiment, iterate, and grow their idea. And this may come up with new ideas around podcasting or storytelling or ways to engage. And as we can show that to our other organizations, hey, this is what's happening over here, and oh, by the way, here are the success stories, that gets really interesting. The user data, right? So we're getting more of it than we ever have before. We know what our audiences look like. We know where they eat. We've seen on the location maps, where they hang out, where they ride their cars, where they take their kids to potentially be abducted at beaches. It's everywhere. We're tracking our people and behaviors, and all that's funneling in very quickly. So what does that mean? Does that mean we're necessarily infinitely smarter? Well, not really, right? I think the biggest opportunity for newsrooms, particularly at the leadership management side, is to grow the awareness and the context behind what we do with that data to the people that will make the most difference, those who are responsible for shaping the stories, the producers, the people building the programming, the people that are working closely within the platforms. And we've heard the term one size does not fit all when it comes to content and stories and editorial and what our coverage looks like, depending on what the screen looks like. Therefore, we really need to be thinking about arming the people in the trenches and not keeping this useful user analytic with the audience research team or with marketing or with management or the consulting group. Let's inform and do workshops and hands-on. This is what you do with the information. This is what it means. It's not enough. We pat ourselves on the back and we think by giving our teams the stats on traffic, we think that's enough, and it's not. We've got to be smarter in how we use that data to our advantage. And Allison did a good job of talking about how we empower the social team with what's working, and then we do better next time. And that extends beyond just social. That's in journalism, folks. An example I like to reference is when it comes to online or any type of video at a multi-platform organization, we know it's not one size fits all. Depending on the screen size, the audience behaviors / tolerance for picking up the remote control and changing the channel or clicking to another site or going to another app or experience on their mobile changes from screen to screen to screen. Yet oftentimes for people that are building, accruing, and plugging in the content, we tell them post the story and it goes in the same version, same format, the same way, 3 different places. It doesn't work that way. Audiences have grown hip to the game. Dresden talked this morning about the importance and the value of young people, and we just heard a little dabble about these new environments where teenagers are hanging out and the importance of tapping into young people. We don't know all the answers. Joy talked about that we are so informed and so hip to every movement with the big story and the medium-sized stories and most of the small ones too, but that's not necessarily who we're trying to reach. And so my suggestion, as you've heard once or twice already, is find the nearest teenager. How many of you here have heard of Twitch? And okay, good. So a few of you have heard of it, and probably after they were acquired by Amazon for a hair short of $1 billion last September. But it's the video streaming platform that is wildly popular. Yeah, see, I didn't know about it either until 3 years ago. I had a secret weapon on my team. I had this free consultant, this 14-year-old that lives on Twitch at my house. And he told me about it 3 years ago. If you don't know about Twitch, you will very soon. It's the 4th largest source of peak internet traffic in the United States today. It's only behind Netflix, Apple, and Google. That means it's doing more traffic peak internet times than Facebook, Hulu, Pandora, Amazon. 43 million viewers a month. I don't get it either. I don't play video games for hours on end, let alone you couldn't get me to watch a stream of people playing video games for an hour on end. This is drawing massive numbers. Again, I only knew about this a few years ago because these are where my teens live on their Xbox. It's important to tap into the teens around you. If you don't have one of these they're actually not free, they're very high-paying, expensive consultants. If you don't have them at your disposal at home, you've got interns that work with you. You've got young people that work back in the feeds room that are part-time writers that are doing some initiative. We at CNN 5 years ago launched a program, Next Gen, aimed at millennial employees. It allowed them a forum for them to get their ideas, to empower them, to talk to management, to grow their skill sets, provide some mentorship and training, but also as a bit of an incubator for these ideas and to monitor the things that are coming down the pipe. I'm only going to quickly call out this Pew research from just a few weeks ago because it's fresh. They've been cranking out survey reports for the last couple of months, but this one specifically on civic engagement is important. They've been doing this ongoing local news study, really going in depth in 3 U.S. cities, Denver, Macon, and Sioux City, Iowa. And the takeaways are super rich, super interesting. I won't go through these because we're running short on time, but please go check out the information, the links. They're on the Pew site, and to me, this stuff is really valuable. So we are becoming this connected generation, right? I like to show this because, again, this is also something that's pretty fresh from BBC Labs. They released this report in January, part of a larger report. This was a graphic, a timeline that they included. It was sort of their version of the innovation, the Times Innovation Report. Very interesting, right? So if you take a look at the last 10 years, and then obviously it gets even more interesting the next 10 years based on these predictions, there are a couple that are super fascinating. Specifically just next year, where BBC predicts newsroom decentralization. That means that we will start to see the beginning of some news operations that will break down the inherent need for a news hub. We won't even need newsrooms anymore because mobile devices and everything that we need to be on the go, from story inception through creation, production, and ultimately publishing, will happen in the field or at Starbucks. And all of our communications will happen mobily and through connected. So that gets really interesting when we start thinking about news operations that no longer have newsrooms. And then 2 years later, in 2018, we've talked a little bit this week about wearables. And as the BBC has called out, their expectation is that by 2018, wearable technology will be standard issue kits, standard issue equipment for all of their field teams. Our notebooks, our laptops, our mobile devices, and of course wearable, whether that's glass or a watch or vibrating socks or something really cool in between. Let your imagination go there. It's happening. And there are probably even some of the students here. I won't be around for this, and I'll be at a high-tech old age home by then, but 2027, Man on Mars, I'm sure you'll be intimately involved with that coverage. That's when things get super fun. Finally, if it were up to me, new rule, you work in news for 5 years, you automatically score an honorary degree in change management. Or at least unlock a cool badge or something, right? Because you can't work in this business for more than a few years and already have some experience of traversing change and adapt and evolve and grow and iterate and innovate and all these things we've been hearing about. And it ain't easy, folks. We get it. Particularly those of you on the management side, do everything you can to support your teams, right? We do that with transparency, communication, even if that means we're going to do a huddle and I'm going to answer your questions with a bunch of I don't know. But it's better than sticking your head in the sand and closing your office door and going in duck and cover mode. We've got to get through this together. We'll get through this collectively. We do this by understanding the culture of how people like to receive information. Even if it's non-answer answers, let's at least work together, all right? Change management, honorary degrees, I'm working on it. And this is my info. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the store files and the tweets. A lot of fun.